Chapter 15, This Too Shall Pass. Life must be lived as a play. Plato. Reducing things to the ridiculous, taking baby steps, and toe mopping are starting points for those who wish to live the dream. In the midst of all this dreaming, life's events still happen. They beckon us away. Reality calls and we have to respond to it. But this too shall pass. Since my youngest child has graduated, I've had the time to reflect on some of the more intense times we went through as a family. In the midst of the crisis, all I could see was the here and now. It never occurred to me that this too shall pass. I was so caught up in the need of the moment that I couldn't anticipate getting through the situation, and that one day I would be looking back on it. I took my responsibility as a parent very seriously, and I worried a lot whether I was handling things correctly, so I wanted to be right and do things the right way. It was all-consuming, and it felt like it was going to go on forever. Now I look back, and it's over. I finished carrying that huge burden alone. Yes, they're still my children, and they have struggles, but they're adults. I wonder if things would have been better had I realized this was just a moment in time, and it would pass. I'm not feeling regret, but I am wondering if I could have saved myself a few gray hairs had I realized it is all part of a temporary fading process. I worried about the long-term ramifications of each decision and thought that I could lose them or that I did irreparable damage if I chose wrongly. What if I had thought differently and realized these incidents were not simply teachable moments, but also passing fancies? I worried so much about my own inadequacies. I worried I might be too lenient, too tough. I worried that one of my kids got angry and became distant, that I would lose him or her. I often chose to be right at the expense of relationship with my child. I worried, is this too much, too little? Interestingly, each decision I thought to be the moment of truth at the time turned out to be brought about by a conflict I can't even remember. It all seems so important in the moment, but the moment passes, and with it goes the weighty issue. Yes, this too shall pass. Every hurt, frustration, disappointment, and struggle fades away, and in the end, we're left with relationship. At my son's graduation, I felt both sadness and joy. I was happy my kids made it, ready to face life, but it was sad that the daily parenting part was over. And as I looked around the gym at other parents saying goodbye, I felt like I had missed out on so much of the fun of parenting because of my unshared responsibility. I wasn't able to run around with a camera at every one of my kids' events. I didn't even own a camera, partly because I was in the era between digital and film. Digital cameras were expensive, but everyone knew film was becoming obsolete, out of date, notwithstanding. The film was expensive to develop. I didn't get to make cupcakes and go on field trips because I worked. I didn't get to have girls' night with the other mothers because I didn't have someone to stay home with the kids while I went out and played. I didn't get a babysitter because I couldn't afford one. We didn't go on vacations or trips, but we did live on a farm near a beach, and I did get to have a lot of kids over, and I would be as creative as possible to feed them because I wanted them at my house. I wanted my kids' friends to feel welcome at our home. Sometimes it was tough when it was the end of the month and the cupboards were bare, and if my kids wanted friends over, I didn't want food to be a barrier. Kids are all about snacks, so I found a way. For example, did you know kids actually like uncooked ramen crunched up and put in a serving bowl? Who knew? But now suddenly, I was free to pursue my dream, and my life changed drastically overnight. I had time on my hands. I was able to jump into the process because I was planning ahead, but I was surprised how guilty I still felt for not being enough for my children. I had to be realistic about my kids' upbringing in that we struggle in many ways. Nevertheless, I wouldn't trade the good, bad, and the ugly for anything. It made our family what it is, and we are all better for it. For example, I saw an unusual maturity that developed in each of us, and we survived difficulties that made us humble, appreciative, and compassionate toward others who suffer. And our difficulties brought out the best in other people. We have known the gift of true friends who love, listen, and encourage. We have been believed in and hoped for. There were people who sat with me and let me vent my spleen about my troubles, and the same people brainstormed with me when I was optimistically creative. And I'm so grateful for those noble souls who looked straight at me with a twinkle in their eyes and said, "You're going to make it, and this too shall pass." Not in a good luck lady way, but in a lockstep with me, providing community and friendship. One of those supportive people was my babysitter, so much more mature than I, who, when I felt like my life was about to fall apart because I felt like I couldn't do it on my own anymore, said, "Lori, stop it. You're the mother your kids need. You give them all they need. They know you love them." And she was right. And I was free, not just because they were on their own, but because they could look back as young adults and reflect that they were loved well, even though there were rough patches in their childhoods. Now I'm looking to my future. I nurtured the dream, I took some risks, I made some headway, and now I can begin to pursue the dream fully. I know that I worried and I would be too old by the time they graduated, but they say 50 is the new 30. I remember when I made the choice not to date until my kids were grown. We had been through enough, and I didn't want to be the one to cause them any more grief. When you live on an island, just dating for the fun of it wasn't really a possibility. It's the small town way. Everyone knows your business, and I knew if I dated and my heart got broken, it would affect my parenting and my kids would be cheated again. It sort of felt like a gift I could give my kids, but then the truth hit me. I would be over 50 when my youngest graduated. Events in each of our lives pass. We hold on to a memory. But our dreams never fade. We each have stories about missed opportunities that only come knocking once, but our dreams never really go away. They are waiting. Does that seem possible? That would mean it would never be too late to pursue one's dream. Yep, that's it. We're never too old, too weak, not smart enough, or handicapped by our past. Remember, you're hearing that from me, the woman who was sure life had passed her by, dealt her a losing hand, and felt guilty about not being enough for the ones who trusted her and depended on her. A good friend is 62 and wants to be a lawyer, and although that may seem outrageous to some people, I believe he's going to do it. What do you love? What dream is waiting for you? Are you too exhausted to try again? Are you afraid you're going to run into another dead end? I remember when I tried for yet one more radio job, I was in the top 3 of the final cut. I thought, if I don't get this job, I'm so done. What ridiculous thought that was. This was my dream, and I didn't get the job, but my friends had a pity party for me, and after a few days, I pulled myself together. Well, I tried again. We've all said it and heard others say it. I just don't want to get my hopes up. Another oldie but goodie. I just need to lower my expectations. What tripe. What balderdash. That stuff floats up out of deep well self-protection that keeps me small and safe, but numb. The deep pain of disappointment should not be blunted because it confirms how much what I love is just that, what I love. I don't want to live in the place where I miss my calling in order to avoid disappointment and heartache. Living safe ain't living. It's knowing heartache that makes us compassionate and disappointment that makes us realize our humanity. I want to learn from all these things, and I'm willing to feel the disappointment as I pursue the joy. I wouldn't miss a moment of it for anything, and I don't want to waste my life avoiding pain. When my daughter celebrated her second wedding anniversary, a coworker asked how old she was. The coworker remarked that her age was way too young to get married. She said that kids haven't lived enough life at that age. I said, well, maybe most kids haven't, but mine sure have. They've lived several lifetimes. They have a maturity beyond the years because of what we've been through together. That was when I realized I didn't need to feel guilty for what they didn't get or what we didn't have. I wanted to rejoice so that many of the life lessons people get later in life my kids experienced early on with me to walk through it with them. When I remember to focus on what I'm grateful for, I can honestly look at the gifts my children have and be happy for the grief, the angst that got us to where we are today. What if everything we went through was a gift in disguise? What if it all meant something wonderful in the end? What if the struggles and trials spur us into greatness? There are so many what ifs, like this and that can empower our journey. What if you're right where you need to be for the what next in your life? I didn't want to be that single mom. It wasn't my passion or my dream, but it has become my gift, and I am grateful. This too shall pass, and it's not just a promise for the unpleasant things. My regrets nudge up against the things I miss about raising a family, and I realize they will never be babies again, never have a first day of school, never dress for the prom. Now it really is over, and I miss all that action. As I write, football season is getting underway, and I'm sad. I miss the camaraderie with the other parents. I miss squinting at the artificial illuminated field to pick out my son's number and the pride when he makes a great block. Life is different. No visiting the school and running into friends. The pathways of my life are changing, and I made a transition, but it doesn't make me miss it any less. My circles are different, and life is taking on a new and exciting turn. I'm happy, but there's a certain sadness when I hear other parents talk of gearing up for school and sports. It's a relief financially not to be buying school supplies this year, but I miss having all the teenagers in my home. I will see them when I see my kids, but it's different. I loved raising my children and interacting with other kids, but my world is now full of adults, so there is sadness mixed with relief. It was an enriching adventure, and I'm so glad I didn't miss it. But I'm so grateful that I began to reviewing my dream and taking steps in the midst of raising kids, because I cannot imagine where I would be without the dream. Have you ever seen the poster of 100 penguins with just one smack in the middle of the crowd that has a red bow tie on, a colorful party hat, and the caption says, "I just gotta be me"? I love that poster, but I hate it too because I always identify with the hundreds of clones. Who will see me? I'm just like every other penguin. I'm not special or different. How do I stand out? Who will notice me? My friends challenged me to look at the poster differently. She said it was true and that all those look-alike penguins are just like me. Strugglers, we're all together in this journey. It reminded me of a story in the book, Me to We. The author Mark and Craig Keilberger share a story about zebras, how zebras move together in a wave and produce a unique kind of camouflage. They don't match the browns and greens of the savanna environment. No, their camouflage is that you cannot tell where one animal ends and the other begins. But if one of those zebras were to wear a red bow tie, it would be curtains because the predator's attention would be drawn to the one who stands out. So being in a community is not insignificant, but rather life-giving. Together we make it, and together we live. Alone, we can be beaten alive or wither in isolation. We need each other. Sometimes we want to be unnoticed because of our shame, and we push people away to prove we are unlovable. But isolation is death. I had a friend who got so fed up with people he assumed he hated them. It took years to discover that his disillusionment was a result of his deep longing to love and be loved by people. Are you so troubled by people that you think you could do without them? The alternative, isolation, is worse than the grief others cause us. What about the pain of disappointment in people? Well, it seems that this too shall pass. If we remember this too shall pass when our kids are struggling, it's easier to encourage them. There were times when they were frustrated or sad, and I was too. I naturally tried to find ways to ease their pain, something I could never do completely. I certainly acknowledged the reality of their hurt. They were not deluded about feeling disappointed. I looked for an opportunity to empower them by telling them the positive aspects of a situation rather than merely getting caught up in the tragedy of it. I didn't promise something I couldn't deliver, like telling them everything would be okay, but I did help them find truth that they could hang on to. It was heart-wrenching when I had to drop my daughter off at a daycare and she cried, but perhaps the guilt that followed was more about the parent than the child. My sister and I talked about the fact that I can just feel bad and cry too when I get in the car, or I can tell her, "You're going to have so much fun and make new friends, and before you know it, I'll be back." That's empowerment. I went to the car and cried anyway, but we have the power to let go of our fears and not impose them on our children. We can be the cruise director for their thoughts about different situations if we resist the urge to indulge the fear and push through to the positive possibilities. It benefits all of us. Daycare, well, that too has passed, but the life skill to see the blessing in what we didn't see coming will put us in a good stead for the rest of our lives. I received grace when I reached out to others who struggled with the same things I did. I hope I offered grace to others as well. It's futile and even arrogant to try to do it perfectly. I never became super mom, and I could not do it all unless I acknowledged that I was needy. I was in no position to receive the gift from someone who could do for me what I could not do for myself. We all need grace, understanding, validation, and love. This too shall pass. But in the midst, when we are offered a hand or offer a loving hand to others, we discover the blessing that is community, and perseverance becomes possible. Just wondering. Do you find yourself isolating and retreating from life? Under what circumstances do you isolate and or retreat? What can you find to do that will keep you in a relationship, keep you in the game? Do you have other single-parent friends? Is there a group you could join for support? What does it feel like to think about this just being a passing thing? Does thinking about what you love bring you joy? Are you struggling with depression? Is it hard to get out of bed? Is it intolerable to face another day? If you're struggling with those types of issues, seek help. I know counseling can be expensive, but look for resources. Sometimes a church will have a counselor you can see. Take care of you. Get back in the game. The kids need you. We need you. This too shall pass, and together we find the courage to face tomorrow. Let others in so they can support you. Ask for help. What are you looking forward to when this is all said and done? What does it mean to you to be in it rather than wishing a situation away? Is there a situation where you can apply this idea? How does that feel? What will you do differently?